Lloyd Vance Insider Football is back for another week here on 1029 The Game and the Coastal Sports Digital Network. Rejoined by my tag team partner, Kevin Midgette. How you doing, Kevin? I know your phone was going nuts with all this free agent frenzy that's going on in the NFL.
Tell you what, man, a lot of checks were written, that's for sure. A lot of guys made a lot of money that maybe they should or maybe they shouldn't have, but we'll get into it.
Yeah, it's funny. It's just like, wow, you're seeing these numbers, and I don't want to hear a player, God bless you, Cam Newton, that's made what $150 million in his career, saying he can't take care of his 9 kids or whatever. These guys are making generational money, and they should be taken care of it. And unfortunately, you see too often, like on that 30 for 30 that you and I talked about a while ago, where these guys are broke. And it's just like, wow, that's just a lot of money. I mean. Uh, Looking at some of these deals, today the big one that came down was my guy Justin Fields gets traded from the New York Jets to the Kansas City Chiefs for a 2027 sixth round pick. And just talking about, overall money, he signed a 2-year deal for $40 million last season, $30 million guaranteed. And you're like, did he really earn that? It's like him. You look at Dak Prescott making $60 million a year, and all these other quarterbacks, and we'll talk about two in a minute, and Kyler Murray. But these big contracts are kind of an albatross.
They're franchise killers, is what they are. I mean, you're like you said, we'll get into it, but you see all the dead cap money now on some of these teams that pay these quarterbacks in particular this huge amount of money. And I know a lot of people have to be, thank you, finally, Geno Smith, another turn with the Jets. I couldn't wait for that. I couldn't imagine being a Jets fan right now, man. I couldn't. It's brutal.
Yeah, and the Jets are funny. They're trying to get the band back together. They brought back Demario Davis coming over from the New Orleans Saints, and now Geno Smith. But I asked this of Javon last week when he was pinch hitting for you. Do you think teams are kind of setting themselves up for that 2027 draft that's looking very talent heavy, and especially at the quarterback position? You have Trinidad Chambliss coming out of Ole Miss. You have Arch Manning coming out of Texas. Dante Moore coming from Oregon. Julian Sam from Ohio State. And there's a couple other quarterbacks, and do you think tanking is here to stay in the National Football League?
Oh, absolutely. I guarantee you, there's like 5 or 6 teams right now that are planning their tank process, and it's sad to for the fan base that they have for these teams. But it's like you're doomed before the season even starts. It's like, why am I going to that? They showed a clip last year of a teenage kid leaving a Jets game. And he was basically just saying, he's like, it breaks my heart. He was almost in tears. He was like, I was born into this. I didn't choose this. And yeah, I mean, that's what it is, man. You can sit there and wait for 2028 now and see what you can do.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, and I was hanging out with Nate and his buddies a couple weeks ago watching the UFC fights, and they're all Eagles fans. And I was just telling them, I was like, you guys are spoiled, man. I mean, the Eagles are a cornerstone franchise now. They won in 2017, they won in 2024, and when you and I were growing up in Philadelphia, I mean, Marion Campbell days, and other than Dick Vermeil turning around a little bit, there was a lot of dead periods in terms of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Absolutely. It's like after Vermeil left, you had Marion Campbell. Buddy Ryan came in as beloved as he is in that city. He never won a playoff game. You got or we said Marion Campbell, but then after that, you had Rich Kotite come in. Rich Kotite
Oof.
finally got him a playoff win, but he stunk. Ray Rhodes brought a little bit of, life to the team. But yeah, man, it was a tough road to hoe when you were like a teenager in the Philadelphia market.
Yeah, and it's always like you were saying, when your team's bad, you're living for that upcoming draft, and a lot of people are getting ready for the NFL draft, which will be April 23rd through the 25th, I believe, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, coming up. Um, but for these bad teams, it's just like, wow, is there light at the end of the tunnel? And I'm looking at some of them, and we'll get to that trade I talked about to lead the show in a minute, but look at the Raiders. The Raiders were 3-14 last year. They're really trying to change their stars. Now we know they're getting back Max Crosby, but they were extremely active in free agency. They brought in Jalen Naylor from the Vikings. Tyler Linderbaum from the Ravens, 3 years, $81 million, owed to be a center now. Uh, Teron Johnson, they traded for him from the Nate's Bills for a 2026 seventh round pick. And then they bring in Eric Stokes on a 3 year, $30 million deal. And the Kobe Dean from the Philadelphia Eagles, they gave pretty good money to, too. So are they going to be able to change their stars as quickly as the Patriots did the year before and then end up in the Super Bowl?
I tell you what, I feel bad for the Raiders in this respect. That Max Crosby deal would have set them up. You figure you went there, you drafted Bowers 1 year, you draft Genty, you go get Mendoza this year, you're adding a new center, you're built, you have the building blocks there, and to add 2 first-round picks on top of that, that really hurt that team that trade didn't go through. As good as Max Crosby is,
Yeah, and getting to the Crosby trade, Kevin, he comes back. He fails a physical with the Ravens, and there may have been some issues with his MCL or some looseness in his knee. Every team's doctors are different, and whether they pass him in a physical or not. Crosby, though, quality guy coming back to the Raiders. He had 73 tackles, 10 sacks last year, and an interception. He's on a 3 year, $106.5 million deal that he signed in 2025, so he's all signed. And when you start talking about the money that Miles Garrett and some of these other guys are getting, it's a value deal. But is he going to stay with the Raiders? And what did you think how Steve Bisciotti and the Ravens handled that situation?
I love a good conspiracy theory. I'll put it to you this way, and I mean, most of the time they're erroneous and everything else. The conspiracy theory that popped around was the Ravens found out they could get Hendrickson as a free agent and had a doctor fail Max Crosby on the physical. Now, did that happen? Probably. But I'm like, that does make sense. Let me get my 2 first-round picks back. I think for the Ravens, I understood the trade when they were trying to push it through with the 2 first-round picks as best as I could. It's like you're trying to win now. You got Lamar, in prime Lamar years. He's just going to start getting older at this point. You got Derrick Henry, who's, father time's right behind him. But I think we talked about 2 weeks ago. If you don't get this guy another wide receiver, it's not going to matter. You can't roll out Zay Flowers as your number one wide receiver there. So, yeah, they're making mistakes.
Yeah, and um, I thought Nate was going to be on. He's got some schoolwork to do, but I was like, all right, I'm going to print out the rosters of the teams that most of us follow and kind of go over that. My other son, Braden, is a Ravens fan, so I said, all right, let's talk about their roster. So we have it I have it in front of me. You're correct, because receivers, you have Rashad Bateman. I mean, you have LeJontay Wester, Devontae Walker and Zay Flowers at this point. Those are the receivers for the Ravens.
Yeah.
I mean, they got to find somebody to help Zay Flowers. Do you think they go into the draft? I think they're selecting around 18 or so. Do you think someone will be there for him there, with Lemon or Tyson coming out of Arizona State? I think Carnell Tate from Ohio State will be long gone by then, but what are you thinking in terms of the Ravens? And yeah, they're picking at 14. So some places are mocking them to get Makai Lemon out of USC, a receiver that was a Blithoff winner. Do you think he could possibly last that long, or should they go another route?
I think they've proven that they can't draft wide receivers. Bateman's been a big bust. They spent a number one on him. I would not be surprised if the Baltimore Ravens get involved in, I'm going to throw it out there, A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown to the Baltimore Ravens, a reverse T.O., because T.O. originally was going to the Ravens, ended up with the Eagles. I can kind of see that. I think A.J. Brown's that wild card in there that, once again, they were willing to give 2 number one picks for Max Crosby. You might be able to get a number one pick out of them if they're that desperate for A.J. Brown.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. And AJ is first and foremost, on the front page in the Philadelphia area, and he's saying all the right things. He's being quiet. We talked about last time you were on about the wink wink he did on the podcast with Edelman and Gronkowski. He wants to be out of Philadelphia. I mean, he's due $32 million on a 3 year, $96 million contract. He just signed in 2024, not that long ago, $84 million guaranteed. And at 28, he had an up and down season this year, 78 receptions on 121 targets, barely over 1,003 yards, 7 TDs. And they're saying Howie Roseman wants those two first rounders, Kevin. Is that too much to ask for A.J. Brown? And whether it's the Ravens or one of these other needy teams for a receiver, do you think somebody's going to step up and say, all right, we're going to give it to him?
I think they shouldn't, but do I think in these times where people are now modes? I mean, head coaches, general managers, they don't get that window like a 3 year stretch anymore. It's like if you don't win this year, chances are you can get run out the door. So will they do something to win now? To subject the franchise to going down the tubes a little bit. Sure. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, but I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, and the interesting thing with him, Kevin, is there were 9 games where A.J. Brown had 5 or less catches in a game, including the playoff loss to the San Fran. 3 catches on 7 targets, 25 yards. So the team was successful, and he was sulking. And I end up thinking, I just don't know if another team's going to set. They were saying the Rams, but could you imagine him going to the Rams with Puka Nakua, who's the number one guy about to get paid, and Puka's going to get his 120 targets, and
Mhm.
AJ's going to be on there reading the encyclopedia on their sidelines.
Yeah, once again, it's like you got to love the internet for the mock draft, mock trades, and drafts. And one of the mock trades I saw was it AJ Brown and a number one pick to the Rams for Devontae Adams and Jared Verse. And now, if I'm the Eagles, I make that deal. I
Yeah.
pull the trigger on that one. So it had to be somebody who was an Eagles fan who put that out there. But I just don't see AJ Brown coming back to the Eagles. I just don't.
Yeah, if he does come back, he's going to be doing sit-ups in his driveway.
Yeah.
It's going to be crazy, and it's just high drama. And the Eagles, they may have to come off their sticking point of, okay, we need those 2 first-round picks in order for him. And at his age and his production and being a headache in the locker room, they may not get that from another team. So I think it's all fluid situation, and I think the biggest thing will be around in when the draft comes. I think they'll really start looking at that. A couple of guys I was talking to saying the Eagles are playing around, thinking about, okay, maybe have him as a June 1st cut after the draft, and the cap hit will be a lot worse, excuse me. Because right now I think the cap hit will be over like 30 some $million in dead money, and that'll just hamstring the Eagles. Because the Eagles, they had problems re-signing their guys. They let a lot of guys walk. We talked about N'Kobe Dean; he left. Reed Blankenship, Dotson. They couldn't sign a lot of guys, and the big one obviously was Phillips, Jalen Phillips, who they brought over from the Dolphins. He went to Carolina, so they may have to, in terms of their roster and their cap space, okay, we got to come off that number. So interesting times. As I said, we'll go through the different rosters of the teams that we kind of follow and closely, and we'll do that in the show a little later. But getting back to the trade that I led the show with, again, Justin Fields, who's only 27 years old. He's going to Kansas City Chiefs for a 2027 sixth-round pick. The Jets are going to pick up $7 million of Fields' $10 million guaranteed um, salary, and then the Chiefs are only going to pay $3 million of that. But he'll be, the backup behind Patrick Mahomes, who's a 9-year vet, but he's coming off an ACL and an LCL in his left knee. But I think this is a good landing spot for Fields. Obviously, last year when they had Chris Olajuwon play for them, they saw they didn't have a backup.
Yeah, I like the pick, the move, I should say. I mean, for a 6th round pick, you get Justin Fields. I mean, you need somebody. Mahomes might not be ready when the season starts. There's a distinct possibility he won't be ready. Somebody's got to play quarterback. So, I mean, you bring a guy in who's played a few years now as a starter. He can maybe, with your new running back that you have with Walker, it's like maybe you can sit there and do some running plays with Fields, get Walker involved, play small ball basically until Mahomes gets healthy.
Yes, and Patrick Mahomes is working with Julie Freiermeyer, the trainer there, and Rick Burkholder to get ready, and all signs are pointing him being ready for some early work in training camp, and then I think, yeah, Kevin, I think I agree with you. I think maybe it's game 3 or 4 when he's totally healthy, and you have Andy Reid bringing a guy let's face it, he's been in a lot of systems. He didn't play that bad, in my opinion, for the Steelers. He won some games. He was, I believe, won 6 games for them, and then they pulled the plug and put Russell Wilson in. But Fields last year, tough situation. We talked about the Jets hater love out there. He was 2-7 as a starter for the Jets last year. Crazy though, he had 7 touchdowns, only 1 interception, but just so tentative in a pocket. He threw for 505 yards in his last 5 games. So there were a lot of games where it's like, throw the ball. I knew you were teasing me early on. I picked him in a draft as my backup quarterback, and that quickly I was like, no, that's not going to work. And he is a great runner. He could do that dual threat stuff. And Andy Reid is going to have fun setting up some schemes with him. Maybe they use him as a goal line, something like that. And then don't forget Eric Bieniemy in terms of quarterback carousel. The other big, well, it wasn't a trade; it was a signing. Yet Kyler Murray, he found a home. His agent Eric Burkhart got to work, and he got him a job with the Vikings. It's a 1-year make good deal, $1.3 million. It's a situation where there's no franchise tag, no transfer tag, so he is going to be a free agent after the season. And I think he's trying to catch lightning in a bottle. Maybe he's this season's Sam Darnold, dare I say.
I'm not going to call him a bum right now. I know I've been prone to. I think it's a good landing spot for him. I'm not going to lie. I mean, you sit there, Justin Jefferson, you get Addison out there. He's got some guys to throw the ball to. The question I was bringing up to people when I was talking was, why didn't the Atlanta Falcons try to get Kyler Murray? Why didn't Pittsburgh Steelers try to get Kyler Murray? Because of Kyler Murray himself. Two of the differences, because they're both dead cap money guys, Tua and Kyler Murray. Thing is with Tua, he wants to play. He wants to be out there. His body's, breaking down on him. The concussions are building up. So, I mean, they'd rather have Tua's, willingness to play in Atlanta than Kyler Murray being a pain in the ass and want a diva treatment. But Minnesota is like, I have Justin Jefferson. I got to give him somebody who can play because McCarthy's looking like he's not going to be any good.
Yeah, and McCarthy, let's face it, it was his rookie season last year, 10 starts. He threw for 1632, 11 touchdowns, but 12 interceptions, bad completion percentage. And yes, Murray should be able to come in there, and he wants to catch that lightning in a bottle. He figures Kevin O'Connell's playbook. He's going to learn the modern scheme around the NFL that McVay and all these other disciples have. And we'll see if it works. But the thing is, I said, at one point he was considered to be ascending. 2019 #1 overall pick. He was also the rookie of the year that year. And under Cliff Kingsbury, he looked like he's playing well in 2020 and 2021, but it just kind of fell off. Now, our loyal listener Penguin, who I appreciate, he brought something up, and somebody asked me this. I asked you, do you ever think Kyler Murray would go back to baseball? He was a high pick. I think he was a first rounder by the Oakland A's. I mean, do you do you think that's feasible? I mean, guys stepping away from baseball just never. It's so hard to come back to it.
Yeah, I think the game's passed him by at this point. He has been working on it, like a job, a career. I think that window's closed for him. And also you got to think of the fact the money these guys are getting paid these days, he doesn't have to play baseball unless he wants to. It's like, well, I'm putting my body through this. Once again, you talk about generational money and everything else. I mean, this guy is not hurting, that's for sure.
Yes, and he's going to get paid by the Cardinals this season. He signed that big contract, 50-some million annually he was getting from the Cardinals, and they're stepping away from him. The Cardinals are like, all right, we're going to roll with Jacoby Brissett, the fantasy football hero at the end of last year. He's putting up all those big numbers with Michael Wilson, and he has Harrison Jr., so we'll see how the Cardinals do in this upcoming season. But with the Vikings, they turned around Sam Darnold with those weapons. I'd have to say Justin Jefferson's going to be happy having him. They're bringing back Aaron Jones on a value contract. They have a tight end in Hawkinson, and a lot of people don't talk about Atkinson, their number 2 receiver. They have some good players there. I know they just lost Naylor, though. But what do you give the chances in terms of Murray beating out McCarthy in the preseason?
I could see it happening. I totally could see it happening. It's not that Kyler Murray can't play. It's the desire to play from what I see from Kyler Murray. I mean, physical shortcomings that he has stature wise, to the side. It's
Yeah.
like I don't see him week after week putting the same effort out there, and I think that's his biggest, default.
Yeah, and he's much like, I remember talking to Michael Vick early in his career when he said he wasted some years in Atlanta just going off of pure talent. They give him the playbook, they give him tape to take home, and he was not looking at it. And a lot of times we're hearing the same thing about Kyler Murray, that he's not studying at home. He was playing Fortnite or something else, and this is his job, as you were saying. So we'll see if he takes it seriously. I'm not saying it's his last chance around the National Football League, but it's a situation where he's got to get it done, and there are some pieces around him. Yeah, Penguin, I see. Yes, Aaron Jones. Yeah, I think he's a good pickup for them. They got him on a value deal, so they cut him. They brought him back, and he's good catch and pass. He's got to stay healthy. That offensive line, they got Shaw coming back from injury and a couple other guys, so could be a good land spot for Murray. But the NFC North, that could be one of the toughest divisions in the NFL, Kevin.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. You got Caleb Williams coming off a great year. I mean, once again, USC, me not liking that aside, he had a great year, man. He showed me a lot, to be honest. And then you put that with the fact that Detroit's going to try to have a bounce back year after they were disappointing last year. And now they got their new two-headed monster running back tandem with Pacheco in there also with Jameer Gibbs. I mean, then you throw the Packers might be the one where I'm like, Romeo Dobbs leaving, I think, hurts that team. They've always had an assortment of wide receivers, but Dobbs going to New England was a great pickup, I think, for the Patriots.
Yeah, and it's interesting. What do you think about Gronk giving him the 87? Is that a big thing? Who cares?
I mean numbers. No, I'm tired. Unless you're that stinking Cowboys number 88 that they like to pass down, I think certain numbers you should just put them to the side. And they're retired slash unretired. They just don't pass them out.
Yeah, yeah, and I thought that was Gronk's not. I think he got elected to Hall of Fame. Not sure is he going to, and yeah, it seems like this generation is not entrenched on numbers like we were. You're coming along, you always had to have that number, your hero guy and stuff. But a lot of players, they're going with the single digit and all kinds of stuff. So we'll see how that turns out for Dobbs with the Patriots. But I think that was a good pickup for him. The NFC North, as I was saying, it is going to be highly competitive. You had the Bears 11-6 last year. The Packers were 9-7-1. And the Vikings, as bad as McCarthy was, 9-8, and the Lions were a disappointing 9-8. So not a losing record in that division. You have a lot of coaches that are well respected now that Johnson's taken over for the Bears, and they seem to have a key plan. What team to you is an early leader in the clubhouse in that division? I'll weigh in first. I think you do got to go with the Bears. What Johnson has done in terms of turning that team around and their attitude, and Williams, the numbers weren't flashy in terms of his completion percentage, but he made a lot of splash plays. They can run the football with DeAndre Swift, and now we're really going to hopefully see what Rome Odunze can do if he can stay healthy.
I agree with you. It's the Bears. I mean, they upgraded the offensive line the year before. They sat there so they could protect Caleb Williams a little better. They were at the point now with the offensive weapons they have. DJ Moore was allowed to go. It was just like, all right, we got Bird in the third now. We don't, we got another speedster out there. Loveland definitely showed up on the back end of the season. I think going forward, the Bears are that team because you have Minnesota. And I thought Minnesota actually, with the record they had last year, that was an accomplishment, with the quarterback play that they had. Green Bay, it's always a Jordan Love factor. I mean, is he going to take that next step? Him and CJ Stroud, for some reason, I have on the same timeline. It's like, are you guys going to take up the next level? And then Detroit, once again, is on a bounce back year.
Yeah, and the thing is with Green Bay, they need Christian Watson to step up. They need Reed to step up. I mean, they have all these receivers they've invested in, and they need a guy to be the definitive number one. We talked about Dobbs leaving. Yes, he may have some inconsistencies, but that is a loss for them. And the Bears have loaded up. We talked about Williams in his ascension and Johnson doing a great job with the playbook. They got Garrett Bradbury coming over from the Patriots in exchange for a 2027 fifth rounder. Neville Gallimore, D lineman, Devin Bush, they signed him for big money, 3 years, $30 million. Uh, Jalen Jones, they just brought him back. So they're doing a lot in terms of that team. Ryan Poles, their general manager, he's trying to turn that thing around and have them be a consistent team. The team a lot of people are talking about in the NFC North, though, the Lions. Has their window shut? Everybody was all Dan Campbelled up and we're eating kneecaps and, even golf. They were like, oh, he's still a quality player. But you talk about they traded David Montgomery. And now it's going to be Jameer Gibbs and Isaiah Pacheco there.
I'm not the biggest golf guy in the world, to be honest. I mean, I thought he was almost washed when he got traded to Detroit. So the fact that he came back, played very well, he's better than I thought he was going to be. But I don't think Jared Goff's that guy that's going to take you all the way. So, nah, I think they had their little peak window right there, and then that was it.
Yeah, now David Montgomery's going to the Houston Texans, and Sonic and Knuckles, they broke him up. And now Pacheco's coming, and he's saying he's going to have a rebirth there with Detroit. We'll see. I just think that the Chiefs made a right decision moving on from him. They did spend a lot of money, though, in my opinion, with Kenneth Walker. We'll touch on him in a second. But can Detroit turn around their running game now that Montgomery's with the Texans?
I love everybody has a rebirth. You've been in the league like 3 years, dude. What do you need a rebirth for? Get better, man. It's I think the thing is I like Pacheco. I don't like how Andy Reid has particularly handled his running backs since he's been with the Chiefs, because he kind of like plugs him in, plugs him out. He doesn't let guys get rhythms. Edwards-Helaire, we know, was a bust there.
Right.
And he was just bringing guys like Williams he would plug in and, during the Super Bowl runs. And I just don't think we'll see what Walker does. I'll put it to you that way. Let him be the main guy there and see how that works out.
Yeah, and you have Kareem Hunt. It's been a lot of retreads. I don't think they've had a 1,000-yard back in like 3-4 years. It's been quite a while, and they need that running back that can carry the load, because Patrick Mahomes was their leading rusher for the majority of the season when he played in games. So it's situation. We'll see what Kenneth Walker does. I wanted to talk to you about his contract, 3 years, $45 million, $28.7 million guaranteed. Is that too much for him? Is the running back market wasn't what it used to be. You got Saquon Barkley making about $20 million a year. But, is this just Walker cashing in off of that big Super Bowl MVP?
I think he's definitely, that market price went up after the Super Bowl performance and the playoff run. But once again, if you're Kansas City, look at it this way. You have an aging head coach, rather. You have an aging quarterback coming off injury now. You have an aging tight end that's coming back for another year. You need someone who can be a workhorse. If you didn't bring in Kenneth Walker, what are you doing offensively? You need somebody to be the focal point of that offense, once again, like we said earlier, until Mahomes gets right.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting in terms of the Chiefs. Kind of a rebuilding situation for them, and I printed out their roster because Nate says I'm a closet Chiefs fan. Everybody knows my love for Patrick Mahomes. Hopefully he comes back strong. We'll see. But in terms of their playmakers, they did sign Tyquan Thornton, which I did like. I think he's best served where he is, around a receiver 3, because last year they thrust him into the number 1, and that's a lot to ask from him. You have Xavier Worthy, Rashee Rice, Jalen Royals, who they drafted last year in the 4th round, are the receivers for Mahomes or Justin Fields when he subs in. Is that receiver group finished? Complete? Is that the group that's going to come into training camp, or do you see them drafting somebody? And also factor in the Rashee Rice situation.
I think Rice you can't count on. Worthy, fast guy. Can he stay on the field? Can he catch the ball? Yeah, they need to add another wide receiver, be it through the draft or free agency, still with what's left over. But yeah, to help that team out, you definitely need another wide receiver.
Yeah, and I'll segue right to it. Tyreek Hill, 32 years old. Do you think Andy Reid gives a flyer on him?
Hell yeah. I've called that one out. Tyreek Hill, that's why he was smiling, being carted off the field when his season was over. He knew he was getting paid, and 2, he was like, I can probably go find a new team. I guarantee I will be shocked. I'll put it to you this way. If he does not end up in Kansas City, Buffalo, or New England, If he doesn't end up in one of those three spots, I will be shocked.
Yeah, I agree with you that somebody's going to take a chance on him. Yes, he's 32. He had, he tore his knee up in a dislocation in the kneecap, but someone's going to give a chance to him. And even if he's not the fastest guy, he's still faster than most of the DBs in the National
Mhm.
Football League. And you pair him with Mahomes and Eric Bieniemy, uh, uh, I said it earlier, rebirth. That could be. Maybe
Yeah,
maybe he has
sure.
maybe he jumps back into the fray, but we'll see. I think a lot of teams are in wait and see mode with Tariq Hill, and maybe around training camp when they see he's fully healthy, and they make him run a little bit, run some routes. Then they're going to probably jump into the mix. But yeah, I definitely think Kansas City, Buffalo Bills, could be teams that he would look at. Maybe like the LA Chargers, somebody like that. I really don't see the Philadelphia Eagles taking a flyer on him. He doesn't seem like an Eagle guy. So, yeah, and Howie Roseman famously said, "We don't take anybody that you know, if they have problems with women and abuse, we're not getting involved." But I think eventually he'll probably change his mind or something. Heaven forbid somebody, one of his bonus babies gets in trouble or something. So we'll see how that goes. But in terms of the Chiefs, I think their biggest need is fixed in the offensive line. They have Josh Simmons there at left tackle. Their left guard, Kingsley Sumataye, he was a second rounder a couple years ago. He has not produce. And they do have Creed Humphrey, one of the top centers out there, Trey Smith, one of the top guards out there. But that right tackle position, they finally got rid of John Taylor and all his penalties, and they're trying to get Jalen Moore going there. But they brought back Mahomes' favorite security blanket on a 1-year deal. He got it blessed by Tay Tay. How excited are you that Travis Kelsey will be back for another season? I think he's going to be like 37 next year.
I'm excited is the wrong word to use. I mean, to be honest, the guy's delaying his own Hall of Fame speech, is what he's doing by coming back for another year. And I think the competitor in Travis Kelsey isn't, he's not pleased with how he's leaving the game right now. I think he's trying to gear up, one last run, get the band back together, and see if he can go out the way he wants to go out. So it's going to be a lot of work on the offseason for him. But, once again, Father Time's undefeated. That body only has so many hits in it, so many catches in it. So we're going to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I agree with you that he didn't like the way they were going to go out last year. That the Chiefs were 6-11. Mahomes got hurt, and it just was everything fell apart for them. And so they want to compete, but that AFC West is tough. I mean, the Denver Broncos, they made it to the AFC Championship game 14-3. The Chargers were 11-6, and they were kind of a disappointment. And then we talked about the Raiders and how Tom Brady's come in there and try to pick this team up in terms of all the free agency moves, and Mendoza's coming there. So there's some excitement for the Raiders. When you look at the AFC West, how are you thinking in terms of handicapping this division for the upcoming season?
I think you have two teams up top, one team at the bottom on their way up, and Kansas City's that middling third team. You don't know what you're going to get, but I'm leaning more towards them going downhill. And so I think Denver's definitely going to be there. Chargers' biggest problem is they can't win in the postseason. They can't win playoff games. They can win regular season games just fine, and at a certain point, it's going to be pointed at Harbaugh. You have to do something with Justin Herbert, this franchise quarterback. You have to make some noise in the postseason.
Yeah, I agree with you. Everybody's going to be pointing the finger at Justin Herbert and the head coach Jim Harbaugh. They got to figure it out because the last couple of years they have not done well in the terms of the postseason. They limped into New England and they didn't even show up for that game, and it was just easy money for them. And a lot of people rate Herbert extremely high. Another one of these guys making over $50 million, and what are you doing? What are you doing for that money? So a lot of eyes will be on the Chargers. I know they lost some guys in terms of you know. Minter went over to the Ravens to be their head coach, and they lost some other coaches. So we'll see how they rebound from there. But Chargers a team to watch, and we're talking NFL all season here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 1029 The Game, Coast Sports Digital Network. Thanks for joining us. Uh, in talking about the Chargers East or the Baltimore Ravens, everybody says they've traded so many people and personnel evaluators between those two teams. The Ravens. they got to fix the offensive line, in my opinion, Kevin. I mean, we talk about the receivers and not a lot of guys there, but what's Jesse Mintor and Declan Doyle going to do with this offense and fixing this offensive line?
Once again, you have to address some things in the draft. You have to hit on some points here. Somebody can come in and play right away because obviously you can't go out and just spend the most money to get the offensive linemen to come in. You need your scouts to be doing their job. And the one thing I think they already dropped the ball, and I've mentioned it before, is when they re-signed Mark Andrews to a big contract, 3 years, $30-some million on a guy who had his worst career year. And then Isaiah Likely goes to the Giants, so you lost him at tight end as well, as Harbaugh was doing his poaching of the Ravens there for the Giants. So, I mean, yeah, I think the Ravens, this might be their last look at that window right now. If they don't do any upgrades on the offensive line, if they don't add a wide receiver, and you're getting one more year out of Derrick Henry, I think this might be the push for them, and that's it.
Yeah, and Lamar Jackson's been there since 2018. Is the window closed on Lamar Jackson? I hear Steve Bisciotti is saying, all right, all the chips to the middle in terms of Lamar Jackson. He's going to probably break Dak Prescott's record in terms of contract, over $60 million. Is Lamar going to be worth it? Can he live up to all the hype? I mean, where are you looking at him at this point in his career?
I think they're at a point right now they will pay him. I think they're dopes for doing it. I think it's going to be a horrible, wretched contract that's going to strangle that franchise for the next decade. So, but will they do it? Yeah, because everyone knows you need a quarterback to win in the league. And Lamar, let's face it, as long as he's been in the league now that you just mentioned, the hits, the tread off the tires, I mean, it takes a toll on a body after a while.
Yes, and we'll see. He's trying to gotten away from that running freelance style that he had for so many years. When he was winning MVPs, trying to be more of a pocket guy. We'll see how that works for him. But you have Declan Doyle coming in there, and he's trying to teach him that McVay playbook. But the other big thing, well, there's two things. Derrick Henry. I mean, he's a guy I've admired. I always try to get him in fantasy. Can he? He's approaching what, like 32 years old.
Yeah.
Uh, can he keep getting it done? I mean, last year I think he went over 1,500 yards again. Can he keep carrying the mail for this team? They have Justice Hill and Rasheen Ali behind him right now. They probably need to get another back to help him out.
I think they do. I mean, he hit the wall a little bit middle of the season kind of thing where he was, he's fumbling the ball a little bit. I don't know if that was just more mental or anything else. But the workload that he had, I mean, we talked about the year before when Saquon had the 2,000-yard season and Henry, the great year that he had. Both of them looked like they had a little more wear going into this past season. And now you get another big year out of Henry like that. It's like it's gonna catch up at some point. So yeah, you need to add somebody else.
Yeah, so they'll be looking at that in the draft, and the defense. Everybody's talking about this defense, and they were bad last year. I mean, I was looking at the stats. The Ravens were 8-9 last year. They allowed almost 400 points. They finished at 398, which is not good. Which was usually un-Raven-esque, and also they were 3-6 at home. So they're going about trying to fix this defense, bringing in Jesse Mintor, bringing him back from the Chargers over there, and Anthony Weaver's coming back. He was with the Miami Dolphins. But they have their big centerpiece, Trey Hendrickson. How is he going to fit in with them? Coming off an injury, he only had 5 sacks last season. Is he the key piece? And what other areas of that defense do you think need to get fixed for the Ravens?
Well, I think it was huge. There's no doubt about it. They needed an edge rusher like that. I mean, the guy who was stepping up for him at the end of last year, actually, in the back half, was Kyle Hamilton, moving from the secondary onto an edge type position. So the fact to get some guy who's actually a legit, Hendrickson's not going to help you against the run. That's where Crosby's better than him. Crosby can help with the run and he can get to the quarterback. But Hendrickson's he's going to put some pressure on the quarterback, and that's definitely what they need.
Yeah, and he's going to be in the mix. Another piece is Justin Matabike. They need to see if he's coming back from that neck injury. Um, Roquan Smith in the middle. He looked a little long in the tooth. He was getting beat early and often on slant patterns and by tight ends, so they got to watch that with him. Another thing for Ravens, though, to get excited about, I think Mike Green, who they drafted in the second round from Marshall last year, he could be another pass rusher that they can throw into the mix. The secondary, as you were saying, Kyle Hamilton was all world last year, but some of the other guys, Nate Wiggins, he looked smallish. He was drafted in the first round, 2024. Uh, Last year, Malachi Starks, the free safety, it looked like a learning year for him. And then Marlon Humphrey and Chidi Awanze, they didn't look too good last year. So can the Ravens turn around that secondary? And I think the pass rush has got to be a big key to that.
I think the Ravens' saving grace is the fact that the division they play in. When you throw the Cleveland Browns
Good
and the
point.
Cincinnati Bengals and the Pittsburgh Steelers, who the hell knows who's going to be the quarterback there? If they're sitting there still waiting on Aaron Rodgers to decide anything, you can add Michael Pittman all you want, but someone's got to get him the ball. So the division will keep the Ravens afloat. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, and let's not forget it came down to what, week 17, 18 last year when they, I think they played the Steelers head to head, and they lost that game. So, big turnaround year for them. They put all their eggs into Lamar Jackson, into this new scheme. They jettisoned John Harbaugh, who had been there, second longest tenure coach in the National Football League. He's now with the Giants. And yeah, everything's set up for the Ravens to do, move forward now that they have Hendrickson, and they're going to have their own draft pick. So good times for them. We'll see if they're able to live up to that bad division. Another team, you and I always talk about them, and everybody's like, maybe you're too focused on them too much, but it's the Philadelphia Eagles. They re-signed just the other day. Dallas Goedert gets a 1-year, $7 million value contract. Last year he I think he had 11 touchdowns, career high. It was good in the red zone, but his blocking was down. A lot of people said the key to Saquon's numbers going down were him underperforming and then not replacing Mekhi Becton on that offensive line. Do you think Goddard's going to be able to come back strong, and what do you think of that signing?
Uh, I think it. I mean, it's a good move. He had a decent season last year. I mean, you get over double-digit touchdowns. I mean, that's good. But also, you need to plan for the future at this point because you've had quite the little window here of Chad Lewis, Selleck, you had Goddard. It's like now would be the time to draft a tight end. And I'm not saying you have to get one of the two stud ones that are with your first round pick, but somewhere around the third round or something, you might want to look in that area for the Eagles. And they brought Calcaterra came back as well. And I mean, it's a band-aid for this year. That's all it is.
Yeah, and they brought in Johnny Munt, former Jacksonville Jaguar, very good big blocking tight end. And to be honest with you, I think that's what the Philadelphia Eagles need. They need a blocking tight end, need to reestablish that running game. And when you look at the Philadelphia Eagles roster going into the draft, we already talked about the AJ Brown situation. Kind of fluid there. We'll see how it goes, but if they get rid of Brown, they're really going to need another receiver. I mean, we talk about the Ravens receivers. I mean, the Eagles after Brown and Devontae Smith, there's not much there. I mean, Darius Cooper, who looked good in the preseason, Johnny Wilson, who looks like a tight end to me, Britton Covey, the new Reno Mahe return guy, and Quez Watkins, who they brought back. He's not much. So, that receiving core, what do you think they're going to do under Sean Mannion? I mean, percentage on Brown coming back, and if he doesn't come back, can Devontae Smith jump up and be a receiver one?
Oh, Lloyd. Let's say, first of all, Dotson wasn't really ringing the bell either. So it's like they've been looking for a number 3 wide receiver for like 5 years now. So that's not the thing. But if you are going to trade A.J. Brown, you either have to draft a wide receiver or you have to have a wide receiver involved in a trade. You have to do something to bring in another wide receiver. You just can't leave Devontae Smith with the other side garbage that you have there. So, yeah, it's a slippery slope, man, because if you keep AJ, you know how this could blow up, and then it's going to tank your whole season. So they have to be careful how they do this. The draft's going to tell us everything.
It is, and I tend to think he'll be back, and it's going to be a distraction. But we'll we'll see if Howie says enough's enough, especially around that June 1st date. Maybe it's a little less palatable to get rid of him. And the offensive line, though, I think is huge for the Philadelphia Eagles. You saw Saquon Barkley get 2,000 yards, unprecedented season. They won the Super Bowl. Jordan Mailata staying kind of healthy. He's at left tackle. Landon Dickerson Begrudgingly came back, Kevin. Very beat up, a lot of surgeries. Thought he was going to retire. He's back. Cam Jurgens is back. He was very beat up, underperformed in terms of center position. A lot of people are kind of questioning him. Tyler Steen was a kind of a disappointment. Former third rounder from 2023. So I think that's why they put him out there week after week. But he didn't replace Mekhi Becton. And then Lane Johnson, is he going to be healthy enough? And they have the new offensive line coach in Cooper. What do you think in terms of offensive line for the Philadelphia Eagles?
It's you hope the offseason is just a little bit longer for these guys to get healthy. I mean, a lot of guys are banged up at the end. Steens doesn't do anything for me, to be honest. I mean, there was rumors I heard was something about Becton. Maybe would you think about bringing him back? The Chargers are done with him, that kind of thing. I, it's one of the you could tell with my most hated play in football, the tush push. They couldn't do it effectively. They didn't have the same push on the line. So I think and the teams are actually starting to figure it out a little more. But if that offensive line isn't healthy, that team's not going anywhere.
Yeah, I agree. And with Stoutland leaving, it's just like, all right, a lot of moving changes. Offense is going to be a lot different. Mannions, we'll see how his playbook fits in. And in terms of Sirianni, how much is his involvement? In looking at the division, it's interesting because somebody was asking me the other day, do the Eagles take a step back? And I think the other teams in the division will be better. And it's going to be, the Eagles won the division by um, 3.5 games last year. I think that Dallas will kind of jump back in the fray a little bit. I don't know if they'll be enough to catch the Eagles, but what do you think about the Commanders in terms of Jaden Daniels coming back from very injured season, and then the Giants? Everybody's talking about the Giants, Kevin. Like, oh, they're getting healthy. They got John Harbaugh. I'm hearing from all my Giants people. Where do you see them?
Yeah, the Giants. I got the highest paid punter now in the NFL. They took him from Baltimore. So what's that tell you? Harbaugh knows he's going to be punting the ball a lot. I love the money that Washington spent, to be honest. I thought Washington did a good job of bringing in free agents. And the key for them, if Jaden Daniels can stay healthy, they're going to be all right. That's the scary team in the mix, I think, right there. They're building something there. They're, assembling a good team.
Yeah, and Washington, you're right. They've been very busy. They Marcus Mariota re-signed him. Traylon Burks, they brought him over. Nick Allegretti, they gave him a new contract on offensive line. He's performing pretty well. Andrew Wiley, they got him. Dietrich Wise, Meek Robertson, Tress Way, re-signed him. So they've been very busy, and I think they're trying to get younger. The Zach Ertz, they decide, okay, step away from him because he's a little up there in age. We'll see about Bobby Wagner if they're going to re-sign him. But, they got rid of Lattimore. So, yeah, I think Washington will be back in the mix, and you got to watch him because James Daniels, he had that sophomore slump season. We all kind of was like, all right, it's probably going to happen because he played so well as a rookie. I mean, making the NFC Championship game, and the bounce back's due for them. And the Giants, as I said, they're loading up. They new attitude with Harbaugh. They signed Likely coming over from the Ravens. They're bringing a lot of Ravens up the Raven way. Not that the
Mm-hmm.
Ravens ever won anything in years. They're bringing that to New York, and New York was such a mess. They're excited to bring Harbaugh there and have him work with Jackson Dart. Uh, I bet you can't wait for Scadaboo and Dart to take their shirts off and be prancing around after games, with their ice on and all that stuff. But they seem to be the young hot team, and we'll see how they do. I want to talk about though your favorite team, and is Stephen Jones going to take the keys from his father, Jerry Jones? Yeah, Jerry's getting up there, and he's been active. Javante Williams, they brought him back, 3-year deal, $24 million. Gave George Pickens begrudgingly that 1 year, $27 to $28 million franchise tag. They got Rashawn Gary coming over from the Packers. They're going to keep Brandon Aubrey, but he's probably going to not show up for a little while until he's the highest paid kicker. Can Dallas fit all these guys underneath the cap in their draft picks? I mean, what's going on there?
Yeah, they can fit him in because they don't have any defense to speak of. As they say, they put all these high priced toys out there, especially you are right. He's going to be probably the first $10 million kicker, Aubrey is. You got all these high priced toys out there, and something's going to suffer, and it's going to be your defense. So I think I wouldn't be shocked when the time comes where Jerry is no longer with us, or at least is not allowed to make any calls, that Stephen Jones is like, all right, let's get rid of some of these high priced guys. Let's start over again. Because
Yeah.
I mean, they're at the point they have to do that. They're just trying year by year to add people, pay more people for this one run, And where they really have to do is just start young and build up.
Yeah, the draft is the lifeblood of the team. I always say that, and you've seen that. We talked about the Eagles earlier. They have a problem by their own doing. They drafted so well. They're going to have to sign these young guys coming up. All these great first round picks that they have, and it's a good problem to have. And as you said, the Dallas Cowboys, their defense, NFL worst. They allowed 511 points last year, couldn't stop anybody. And yes, they can score points, and they got a quarterback that threw for 4,000 yards, a 1,000-yard rusher, 2,000-yard receivers. But those receivers, I mean, they're counting for, I don't know, like 1/3 of their cap, something crazy like that. Because C.D. Lamb's making a ton of money, and then you have George Pickens, he's making almost $30 million. So it's like, what are they doing? But as you said, I think it's going to have to take a situation where eventually somebody comes in there as a GM and Steven takes over as the true owner of this team to clean that thing up. But, I think Jerry at this point, he just loves having his team. First and foremost, the lead story in ESPN and everybody talking about him and everything, but they're not winning everything. And it's just like year after year, everybody gets, all the Cowboy fans get all hyped and then they fizzle. So we'll see, but they're spending a lot of money. Uh, are they going to, with the Cowboys, they have Ken Clark there, you know, are they going to be able to keep him? Are they going to cut him? You know, they're going to have to start moving something around.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You sit there, you spend all this money on your offensive side of the ball, you have no money for defense. So you can't sit there, you franchise tag Pickens, give Javonte Williams his bump, give Aubrey a bump on top of what CD and Dak are making. So yeah, something's going to suffer. So you're probably going to have to move, Clark.
Yeah, and then getting back to the Philadelphia Eagles here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 102.9 The Game, Coast Sports Digital Network. I'm here with Kevin Midgette. Thanks for joining us. All right, everybody asks me all the time about this guy and Jalen Hurts. Where should we rate him? And I don't care about his rating, in terms of the other, is he top 10 or whatever. He's a winner. Is he going to do enough to jump this team back into the playoffs and win some games? And what does he need to work on?
Jalen needs to have more confidence in Jalen throwing the ball. He doesn't throw the risky pass. He doesn't let it rip, which sometimes it helps, but sometimes it's like, no, you got a guy one-on-one. Put the ball up there. Give him the 50-50 ball. See if he can go up there and get it. And maybe AJ wouldn't be as pissy if he actually would do that. The one thing, it's funny, Jalen Hurts, you just mentioned being a winner, which I totally agree with. He kind of reminds me of just the fact that they're not flashy, but they win games. Phil Simms won a lot of games in the NFL, and he didn't hang the biggest numbers in the world, but he knew how to win. And Jalen Hurts has that going for him.
Yeah, I agree with you. And a lot of people, I think they just come down on him a little too much in terms of the wins and losses. I mean, it's a team game. I never thought he was an MVP type quarterback, but he moves the chains. He typically takes care of the football. And as we said, the Eagles are a winning franchise. And there's just not a lot of guys out there that get you to the Super Bowl, let alone win it, and then are the MVP. So, that's going to buy you a lot of goodwill and time. And I think the Eagles are going to say, all right, let's tinker and move some things around. Let's get rid of Patullo, bring in a new offensive coordinator for Jalen Hurts. You know, maybe he can make up with his best buddy AJ Brown. Or I tend to agree with you, Kevin, that is a tenable situation. It's a crucible only waiting to boil over. So we'll see, but I think yes. And then another person was emailing me asking me about Tanner McKee, the draft. Oh well, maybe if they draft like a Drew Allar or somebody, they should trade Tanner McKee. And as you said earlier, I love these internet fantasy football trades. Well, send Tanner McKee um, you know, over to the Saints for a first round pick. I mean, what do you think the Eagles realistically could get for a Tanner McKee?
My God, people love Tanner McKee. I don't get it. What the hell has Tanner McKee done? My God. Even my moron friends, they're like, oh, Tanner McKee, yeah. I'm like,
Yeah, yeah.
what? What has he done? Nobody's giving you much for Tanner McKee. I tell you what, if there was a real desperate team out there, you might get a third or fourth rounder for him. Max, more likely a fifth. There's no value in Tanner McKee unless he has the keys to the car himself and drives it for a little while.
I agree. He's just not played a lot of games, and I guess those guys are so starved for football. They're watching preseason games, and he looks so good against the Cleveland Browns
Yeah, yeah.
in July, August that they're like, and there were a couple guys like, oh, put him in as a starter, take Hurts out. No, no, it's just not happening. I mean, 6th round draft pick, and typically the slotting and pedigree, they understand where a player is going to be, valued. And I think McKee, yes, kind of what you were saying, maybe a 4th round or 5th rounder for him, but the team's got it takes two to tango. And speaking of backup quarterbacks, wanted to get your take on this before we, you know, wind down. Malik Willis, 3 years, $67.5 million, 45 fully guaranteed from the Miami Dolphins. Was that the right move for the Dolphins? And a lot of people are saying, "Oh, Malik Willis is now going to be the new Sam Darnold. He's going to go from backup to being a star."
I tell you what, I'll put a scenario out to you. You got a team with a whole lot of dead cap money at their quarterback position. You got a team that brings in Kevin Patullo, that offensive genius, to be on their team. And let's go get a quarterback here for full tank mode. Malik Willis, you're the guy. The one thing I'll say Malik Willis, though, hey, the weather's going to be nice. You get tax breaks being in Florida. Good call for you getting out of Green Bay. You're getting paid. But I don't think it's going to end up well.
Yeah, I think he got paid, but with so many backup quarterbacks, you see them finally get their chance to be a starter, and they jump in there, and it's just like, oh, he's who we thought they were. Dennis Green somewhere yelling that out, and it's just like, okay, it's like, look, everybody's like, don't talk about Saint Nick, but when Nick Foles didn't play for the Eagles, he went to the Rams, and I think he started some for the Chiefs. It just was not the same situation. He just did not look good, and too often, certain guys fit in certain systems with certain coaches, and that's how we're going to see, Malik Willis away from LaFleur and see how he plays. So I tend to think, yeah, he's going to take his lumps there in Miami. They're another team. It's just like they got a mess there. And in terms of Tua, they created, Stephen Ross, Chris Greer got fired, their GM, based off of this, and they bring in John Eric Sullivan there as general manager, and Halfleet as head coach. But, in terms of Tua, is that the worst contract given in the National Football League? I guess you could. Well, I guess Deshaun Watson's probably the worst one, but
Yes.
other than Deshaun Watson,
Man, it's up there. It really is. You can't just vote it down. Deshaun's number one. He's on Mount with just him and three more pictures of his face. But on the other one, Tua, yeah, that's a bad contract, man, and it's going to affect that team for a very long time.
yeah, and now he's going. They must like left-handed quarterbacks in terms of Ian Cunningham, the new GM down with the Falcons. So it's Michael Penix coming back from, I think he had a knee injury.
Mm-hmm.
Again, he had several in college. And then you have Tua sitting there. And Atlanta, they've been kind of busy in free agency, and they have Drake London there, Bijan Robinson, very good young player. Um, they signed your buddy Jahan Dotson, by the way. and Kyle Pitts, they brought him back on a franchise tag. Is there enough there for Tua to be the starter? And how do you see that quarterback situation playing out?
I think change of scenery for Tua is good. I also think, though, that the guy can't stay on the field. It's proven once the multiple concussions begin to happen, you're more susceptible to them. And him being on that turf's not going to help either. But, yeah, do I think he's better than Penix Jr.? Absolutely.
Yeah, I think he's going to come in there and help that team. And we talk about divisions. They all were tied in at the top of the NFC South, which was just terrible. At 8 and 9, Panthers won all the tiebreakers. But the Falcons, if they just get a little bit of good quarterback play, and that defense, comes around with guys like Jesse Bates, they could make some noise there. They brought in kicker Nick Folk. How do you handicap the NFC South right now, Kevin?
As of right now, I think Carolina's done a lot. Actually, I think Carolina's made themselves a little better as well on the lines. I lean towards Carolina right now going forward. I mean, Tampa Bay losing Mike Evans, I can't help them.
Yeah, in Carolina, they won a division last year, and Bryce Young played a little bit better. They did lose Dowdle, the running back, and they'll see how they're going to work that out. But they did bring in Jalen Phillips from the Philadelphia Eagles, 4 years, 120 million. I'd have to say they're going to be in the mix, and the NFC South's going to be wide open. Baker Mayfield's doing his thing as well, so going to be interesting there. And we'll just keep talking all season rosters and getting ready for the draft and free agency. Anything else before we wrap up here, Kevin?
Since I wasn't here last week, I just got to throw this in here. Jalen Phillips got some stupid money, man. That was unbelievable. $120 million for 4 years, 30 mil a pop. Good for him. It's not my money, but man, if that's a lot of money for him.
Yeah, and Carolina broke them off, and we'll see how that works out. I knew the Eagles were not going to be able to enter the mix there, and the Eagles re-signed Jordan Davis. They're talking about extending Jalen Carter, so we'll see how they do in terms of getting their young guys underneath the salary cap and on the roster for this upcoming season. But another great week here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 1029 The Game, Coast Sports Digital Network. We appreciate everybody being with us, and we'll see you down the road.